It is early evening right now at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where at this very moment, an American astronaut, a Russian cosmonaut, and the first ever astronaut from the United Arab Emirates are sitting aboard a Soyuz spacecraft perched 160 feet above a Soyuz booster and ready to launch less than an hour from now at 8:57 a.m. Central Time, 6:57 p.m. in the evening over in Baikonur. Right now, we're going to get you a live view, or we'll get it to you very soon. You can see at the top right of that board, and they're sitting on a Soyuz rocket on site number 1, the launch pad in Baikonur. And that's the historic 1961 launch site of Yuri Gagarin, the first human to ever travel into space. This is going to be the last launch of a crew from Gagarin's launch pad for the next couple of months, while engineers down there renovate Site 1 for future crewed launches on an upgraded Soyuz 2.1A booster. And that actually made its first flight with an uncrewed Soyuz a little bit earlier this summer, traveling all the way up to the International Space Station and back down to Kazakhstan. The next Soyuz launch to the station in spring of 2020 is going to be the first crewed flight on that Soyuz 2.18 booster, and that's going to be launching from Site 31 down in Baikonur. Today, though, a team of launch controllers are watching over the systems aboard the rocket, which at this very moment is fully fueled and ready for launch, not tracking any issues so far throughout the day. And that day began with fuel and oxidizer loading all the way back at 5:52 a.m. Central Time, 3:52 p.m. in the afternoon out at the launch site in Baikonur, and that was completed just about 2 hours later. I do want to say good morning and welcome you here to Mission Control Houston. I'm NASA's Dan Hewitt, and I'm going to be taking you through today's launch and all of the subsequent phases as the Soyuz arrives at the International Space Station a little bit later this evening. And again, we're going to be here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the team's going to be watching over the Expedition 60 crew and all of the station systems, and they're going to be preparing to support the arrival of this Soyuz MS-15 vehicle. Station population is going to increase from 6 all the way up to 9 with the addition of our 3 new crew members. It's NASA astronaut Jessica Meir over there on the right. In the middle is Russian cosmonaut Oleg Skropochka. He's the commander of the Soyuz mission today. And on the left there is Hazza Ali Al-Mansuri. He's an astronaut from the United Arab Emirates and a spaceflight participant making a short taxi flight up to the station. Once they arrive, it's going to mark the largest the station crew has been since September of 2015, when we actually had 9 crew members on board during a 7-day period during Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko's year-long mission. These 3 are about to begin a planned 4-orbit flight to the International Space Station, set to dock at approximately 6 hours after launch at 2:45 p.m. Central Time today, or 12:45 in the morning on September 25th. Thursday over there in Baikonur, where their colleagues, friends, and family members of the Soyuz crew are going to be watching the events unfold. Right now, standing out at a site just about a mile away from the launch pad, ready to watch them ride into orbit. The spacecraft is going to be docking with the Russian segment. It's actually going to go to the very back of the station to the aft port of what's known as the Zvezda module. You can see it in the lower right of the station here on this shot. It's that Soyuz MS-15. And they're going to be joining the current station residents on board. There's some NASA astronauts, Christina Cook and Nick Hague, and Russian cosmonaut and space station commander Alexei Ovchinin. They arrived aboard the Soyuz MS-12 spacecraft back in February. Also on board, NASA astronaut Drew Morgan and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Skvortsov, and then European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano. Those 3 have been on board since July. Parmitano, who's in the top left of that picture there, is going to be taking over as the Expedition 61 commander on October 3rd, when Hague, Ovchinin, and Al-Mansuri undock and make the trip back home aboard the Soyuz MS-12 vehicle. For now, though, here in Houston, the team in Mission Control are going to be monitoring today's launch, getting updates on the flight from the ground to the station from their Russian counterparts, and it's going to be Flight Director Ed Van Cise. You can see a few more people in the room than normal. The gentleman standing up there is Royce Renfrew, the outgoing Orbit 1 Flight Director. On the very bottom is Ed Van Cise in the blue shirt. He's going to be the Flight Director for this trip today. And just above them, in the red, that's Don Pettit, the offgoing Capcom, and Diane Daly, the NASA Capcom for Orbit 2. And we should be hearing her voice a little bit later this evening. During the Soyuz's climb to orbit, tracking and telemetry is going to be downlinked to ground stations along the flight path, and then actually routed over to the Russian Mission Control Center. We're getting a live view from a camera right here that's located just outside of Moscow. One quick fun note, though, we are going to try and stop and take a few questions during today's launch broadcast, but also during the phases a little bit later when we get to the docking and the hatch opening show. So if you have any questions you want to ask, go ahead and hop onto Twitter and use that hashtag AskNASA, and we'll try to get through as many of those as we can. Today's launch actually marks the first flight into space for NASA astronaut Jessica Meir, and the first for spaceflight participant Hazza Ali Al-Mansuri of the United Arab Emirates. And this is actually the third flight for Russian cosmonaut and Soyuz MS-15 commander Oleg Skripochka. For now, why don't we get to know our crew a little bit better? We'll start off with Jessica Meir, NASA's next astronaut to fly into space.
The thing that's always driven and excited me is exploration in general. So I think I've always been attracted to these extreme environments, places where fewer people have been, where conditions are a little bit more harsh, a little bit more rare, and really extreme in general. I went to the Antarctic 5 times. 4 times was for my PhD research. And the work that we were pursuing then in the Antarctic was looking at the diving physiology of emperor penguins. They use this really big drill to create a hole in the ice, and so you enter the water through that hole in the ice. The first time you go diving through the sea ice hole, you really never forget the feeling. The water down there is a constant -2 Celsius, so 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can see rays of light coming in from any crack or hole anywhere around the area. And that's where you start realizing all of the color and the beauty in the Antarctic is. It's just an extraordinary experience, and the things that I saw underwater there is definitely the most remarkable and exceptional diving I've ever had. One of the things that we use for training for spaceflight for astronauts from all of our partner agencies is training in analogs. So if you try to think, what are useful training platforms on the Earth? How do we replicate all of the characteristics of a space mission? One of the analogs that the European Space Agency developed is called CAVES, and it's a technical caving mission. So the CAVES training mission was in this very extraordinary cave in Sardinia. So you would sometimes be crawling through a hole that when you see it in the distance, you don't think there's no way that you could even fit through that. You know, one at a time, we would take off our packs and sort of shimmy like a snake through these tiny, tiny little holes. And then all of a sudden you would come out into this room, this cathedral with a 100-meter granite wall. I mean, it was really just extraordinary. And then we would go on daily excursions, doing scientific experiments, exploring, mapping the cave. So all really similar things that we would do when we finally get to the point of exploring another planet, for example, as astronauts, and then also emphasizing all the other skills that we use on the International Space Station. The other connection that's really important to me is that all of these environments involve natural phenomenon on our planet. So it all goes back to my interest in biology, looking at this remarkable diversity in the animal kingdom with my previous research, exploring all of these amazing landscapes and ecosystems on our planet, and then eventually when I have the most extraordinary of any view, when I'll be on the space station in a couple months, looking down and seeing this magnificent planet Earth and seeing the beauty of our planet and really understanding how special it is and how fragile it is and how important it is to protect it, to take good care of our home planet, to protect our oceans, to protect the land, and to be really a good steward in our universe. I'm Jessica Meir. I'm a scientist and a NASA astronaut.
Born and raised in Caribou, Maine, NASA astronaut Jessica Meir holds a Bachelor of Arts in Biology from Brown University, a Master of Science in Space Studies from the International Space University, and a doctorate in marine biology from Scripps Institution of Oceanography. From 2000 to 2003, Dr. Mir worked for Lockheed Martin's Human Research Facility, supporting human physiology research on the Space Shuttle and International Space Station at NASA's Johnson Space Center. During this time, she also participated in research flights on NASA's reduced gravity aircraft and served as an Aquanaut crew member in the Aquarius underwater habitat for the 4th NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations, or NEMO mission. Afterward, Mir's research focused on the physiology of animals in extreme environments, with her PhD research studying oxygen depletion in diving emperor penguins in the Antarctic and in diving elephant seals in Northern California. And then her postdoctoral research at the University of British Columbia investigated the high-flying bar-headed goose by training geese to fly in a wind tunnel while obtaining measurements in reduced oxygen conditions. In 2012, Dr. Mir accepted a position at the Harvard Medical School, Massachusetts General Hospital, where she continued her research on the physiology of animals in extreme environments. She also took part in Smithsonian Institution diving expeditions to the Antarctic and Belize. Selected in 2013 to become an astronaut as part of NASA's 21st astronaut class, Mir completed her training in 2015. She'll be in familiar company when she arrives at the station, joining 3 of her former astronaut classmates, current station residents Nick Hague, Christina Cook, and Drew Morgan. And that was a little bit more about Jessica Mir, the NASA astronaut flying today. She's going to be seated to the left of the Soyuz commander and the Russian cosmonaut on today's flight. Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Skoropochka is returning to space for the 3rd time today. Born in Novosibirsk, Russia, Skoropochka was a member of the Young Cosmonauts group while he was a student at Zaporozhye Physics and Mathematics High School number 28, graduating in 1987. Afterward, he attended Bauman State Technical University, and while an undergraduate, he obtained work experience at the Russian Space Corporation Energia as a test subject and as a mechanic in the project department, graduating in 1993 with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering with a specialization in rocket engineering. Skoropochka worked at RSC Energia from 1993 to 1997 as an engineer at the Transport and Cargo Vehicles Ground Hardware Development and Testing Project Department. Oleg is also a first-class skydiver with over 300 parachute jumps. Selected in July of 1997 as an RSC Energia cosmonaut candidate, Skoropochka completed basic spaceflight training at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in 1999, qualifying as a test cosmonaut. His first trip into space was in October of 2010 as a flight engineer during Space Station Expeditions 25 and 26, and while aboard he performed 2 spacewalks. His second flight began in March of 2016 on Soyuz TMA-20M as part of the Space Station Expeditions 47 and 48, during which he completed his 3rd spacewalk. To date, Skoropochka's cumulative spacewalking total is 16 hours and 41 minutes spent outside the space station. Skoropochka is serving as the Soyuz MS-15 commander and will serve aboard the International Space Station as an Expedition 61 flight engineer and later as the Expedition 62 commander. Seated to his right is first-time flyer, United Arab Emirates spaceflight participant Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri. Born in Al-Wathab and spending his early years living and going to school in Al-Dhafra in western Abu Dhabi, Al-Mansouri's passion for astronomy led him to join the armed forces and later become a military pilot. He became a functional check flight pilot for the F-16B-60 and spent 3 years training on this aircraft in the United States in Arizona. Afterward, he returned to the UAE to complete his training. 4 years after his return, Hazza became the youngest Emirati military F-16 pilot, qualifying to be a flight testing and aircraft assessment pilot. The UAE astronaut program launched in 2017 to train and prepare a team of Emirati astronauts and send them to space for various scientific missions. Following a series of mental and physical tests in the UAE and abroad, Al-Mansouri was selected from a field of over 4,000 candidates. In September 2018, Al-Mansouri started training with the Russian space agency Roscosmos at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia. He will be the very first member of the UAE astronaut program to fly into space. And this is some recorded video from a little bit earlier today as the 3 crew members got prepared, woke up in the Cosmonaut Hotel and got ready to make their way out to the launch site. The crews were woken up at about 11:57 p.m. Tuesday night Central Time, 9:57 a.m. in the morning over in Baikonur, which is about 9 hours prior to the launch. They participated in all of their final pre-launch activities, and all that begins at crew quarters. What you're seeing here is a pretty old tradition of before departing for the launch pad, the crew members go through a ritual of autographing some of the doors on the rooms that they occupied at the Cosmonaut Hotel in Baikonur. You can see just one set aside here, all 3 crew members getting a chance to sign their names, and all those other signatures are from crew members, both NASA, Roscosmos, and all of the international partners from over the years. They also get a blessing here before they depart from a priest of the Russian Orthodox Church, who earlier in the week also takes time to go out and bless the rocket itself at the pad, and the various pad workers, and even some of the members of the media that will generally gather to document these launches. Following that, they stroll out from the Cosmonaut Hotel down a sidewalk lined with friends, family, well-wishers, program officials from the various space agencies before they make their way onto a bus. And this is one of the last of several times that they get a chance to see all of these folks before they load into the rocket. They walk out to a traditional song that's played every single time, and the Russian name for it escapes me at this moment, but a lot of tradition surrounding all of these launches in Baikonur, as they have, again, been launching from this area since the 60s when Gagarin made that first leap into space. So for the prime crew, it's on to one bus, the purple one here, and then the backup crew follows behind in another large bus. They're accompanied by a lot of the flight surgeons and doctors. Again, you can see a large mass of people there gathered outside of the Cosmonaut Hotel. This all taking place a little bit earlier this morning at about 2:57 a.m. Central Time, 12:57 p.m. over in Baikonur. It's about a 40-minute ride from this hotel actually onto the Cosmodrome itself, where they head over to what's known as Building 254 inside the Cosmodrome, and that's the integration and suit-up facility. So getting a chance to wave a pose there from Huzzah. Again, you can see a pretty large crowd gather there. NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius sneaking into view real quick there, but getting their first departure from this hotel. Again, it's about 40 minutes from the hotel onto the Cosmodrome. It's very sparse area, as obviously you're launching rockets. You don't want a lot in that area. It's a very vast and open Kazakh steppe. And then they arrive here in Building 254. Once they get to the actual suit-up and integration facility, it's time to get into these launch and entry suits. And this is called the Sokol. It's the white suit. You can see Oleg Skropochka getting into it here. This is worn throughout all the different dynamic phases of flight, so they're going to wear it for today's launch and the eventual docking with the International Space Station. Then the suits get put away and they get brought back out if they're ever flying in that Soyuz, either for a relocation or when they actually come back down to Earth. And these suits just act just like the large orange ones that you might remember from the shuttle era that astronauts wear. They're able to be pressurized and provide additional breathing gases and a safe atmosphere for the crew members should the capsule itself become unpressurized. They also get a communications cap, so they're able to not only speak with each other, but also the flight controllers down on the ground who oversee their flight all the way up to the space station. There are several specialists. You'll see a lot of individuals wearing masks and other items, as the crew are kept in a quarantine prior to their mission to help reduce the chance of any infectious diseases or anything making its way up to the space station. They're kept in a strict quarantine for about 2 weeks prior to their flight. Very controlled access to the crew themselves, and then any not also in quarantine, like the backup crew, will have to go through some preventative measures, usually wearing masks or different protective gear. Here you can see NASA's Jessica Meir also getting suited up. First, all 3 crew members get suited up, and then we'll see them move into another room where they actually do some pressure checks on the spacesuits themselves. You can see Jessica Meir playing with the small blue knob that actually is used by the astronauts to control the pressure level inside of those suits. And the backup crew right behind them, Tom Marshburn on the right there in the blue suit. He's been the backup for the last 2 flights. The backup crew helping the prime crew get ready for their flight, and they're also on deck to step in should the prime crew or any of the prime crew members not be able to make the trip. But again, after that initial suit up, they move over here, and then they get into actually a mock-up of an actual Soyuz seat, and they go through and take turns having their suits actually pressurized. So you'll see them close the visor, and the suits themselves will actually start to puff up, and that means they're being pressurized and filled with air. They do this to get a good leak check on the suit, make sure all of the seals are acting correctly, and this is one of the final steps before they actually make their way out to the rocket. You can see Oleg Skropochka there in the seat, his suit a little bit puffed up. That means it's going through that pressure check. They do this again to make sure that their suits are free from leaks. This is also one of the final chances that the crew members get to speak to friends and family that have gathered. They're on the other side of this protective pane of glass, again, to help maintain that quarantine. And you'll see them one by one do the pressure check and then make their way over to the pane of glass where they're able to speak to friends and family and also program officials from their respective space agencies. So with Oleg Skropochka's job done in the chair there, it was next up to Jessica Meir. You can see her, again, using that knob in the front of the suit to adjust the pressurization inside. You can see how it looks like it's been inflated kind of like a balloon. That just means the suit's been pressurized, and doing this to check, again, those seals, make sure no leaks in the suit.